the most interesting part what Doug is talking about the integration, the meshing of the two offenses together, which I think has been an issue throughout the OTAs, and part of the reason the Eagles struggled offensively.
Welcome in, everybody. Good morning on this Tuesday edition of Birds 365. Got a great show for you planned. Johnny Mac, good Tuesday morning to you, sir. It's officially mandatory mini camp today, so pretty good stuff, but also good stuff yesterday. Some assistant coaches spoke. We got a good show planned with Jeff Kerr and Ed Kratz on today's show, so pretty good Tuesday here in Eagle Land. How you doing this morning, Johnny Mac?
Yeah, mandatory minicamp. And I started out with some computer problems, but we're back on track, so that's good. I did see a quick comment about, are we going to hear pads popping today? Come on, guys. There's no pads in the off season. You're not going to see the pads for a long, long while. They legislated them out of the game a long time ago, and this is just T-shirts, shorts, jerseys, and all that passing camp good stuff. And Bobby King, the Eagles' new inside linebackers coach, sort of said that in a disgusted fashion when it's a passing camp.
Yeah, a couple things I want to get to, John, before we get to our guests. It is passing camp. Shout out to our guys, Twiz, Mark Holmes in the chat, if that's the real Mark Holmes. What's going on, Mark? Screwface, Rashid, SMD Eagles, anybody in the chat, anybody I missed, we appreciate you all being here this morning. A couple things happening in Eagle Land, John. I want to run through them, but the first thing I want to get to is your takeaways from the assistant coaches yesterday. But officially, Jason Kelsey and Fletcher Cox officially retired. Those papers have been filed by the Eagles, so it's officially the end of an era in Philadelphia. Two great Hall of Fame Eagle players. I think they're NFL Hall of Famers. We'll see if they get in. But two great Eagles have hung up the cleats. A great day, but a sad day because they were two of my favorite Eagles. So they are officially on the in retirement. And then Eagles signed a guard, Max Sharping. So we'll get to that after. But John, let's get to the assistant coaches that spoke. What were your first takeaways? I know a couple of them spoke. Clint Hurt, D-line coach. Doug Nussmeier, the quarterbacks coach, spoke. Christian Parker, defensive passing game coordinator. Bobby King, you mentioned, linebacker coach, and Jeff Stoutland, the offensive line coach. So anything that stuck out to you that you want to get to this morning that they spoke on yesterday?
Well, Stoutland's always he's playing the big room, so to speak. He's the headliner, and he went last expectedly. So interestingly, the PFA is going to come out, Pro Football Writers of America is going to come out with their Dr. Z Award, which is a lifetime achievement award for assistant coaches in the NFL. Jeff Stoutland's a finalist. He might win that today. We'll learn that later this afternoon. But yeah, one of the all-time greats. And one of the things that stuck out to me, and he's very honest. He's always, if you go back to when, which is rare amongst modern football coaches who try to understandably be a little bit more political, but I don't think Jeff has a political bone in his body. And if you go back to Jordan Mailata's first start against San Francisco and Nick Bosa, and nobody had any idea. There are a lot of people like to go back and say, "Oh, I knew." Stout didn't know. He said it. We happened to have him that week, and he was like, "I don't know. I hope he's ready." And all of a sudden he holds up well against Nick Bosa, and the rest is history. And he talked about Cam Jurgens yesterday, and he was like, he was worried about Cam Jurgens as a guard. He had no idea if he could handle that job, but he's got no worries whatsoever as a center. I thought that was interesting. And that, he drafted him as a center. He helped draft him. The Eagles drafted him. And that's his position, and he's very confident. That's not to say he's going to be Jason Kelsey. There's like 5 people in the history of the game that could be in that conversation as one of the all-time great centers, but they're very confident that they're going to have a top-tier center. So it's a matter of expectations, obviously. And my biggest concern over Cam would be durability more than anything else. But
yeah, right.
So that Doug Nussmeier talked a little bit about meshing the two offenses together, which has been a struggle at least early in the spring. Maybe that shouldn't be a surprise, but I think everyone looks at the talent and expected they'll just roll the footballs out there and everything will be fine. But it's going to be more of a process than that. It's pretty clear from that perspective. So he talked about that. Christian Parker, very impressive young coach, talked a lot about versatility, corner to slot, slot to safety, dime. They have so many players with a little bit of versatility, but he said the goal is to give everybody a home, so to speak. And they're trying to figure that out with Cooper DeJean. Where's his home going to be? Where's his prime
Yeah.
position going to be? And then you sort of build out from there. So that was kind of interesting. Bobby was old school, and he was more of the Bobby King was more of the not wanting, didn't say much, didn't want to give much. Everybody's a good player,
Yeah.
blah blah blah. But he did talk. You could tell he's a big fan of the history of the game, and he got to ask, who are some of the linebackers in the past that you liked? And he started with Dick Butkus, which is, what you might think of an old school linebacker coach. And yeah, what is there a Dick Butkus today? And he said, no. He's like, well, first of all, they'd be fined 25 times a game.
Yeah.
And it kind of, brings to the forefront of how much the game has changed. They're not even playing the same game as Dick Butkus was playing. It really is completely different. And I think more than any other professional sport, there's been evolution, there's been changes, some good, a lot bad, but none more so in the NFL, where they're not even, as I said, they're not even playing the same game as they did 30 years ago. Never mind when Dick Butkus was playing. So that kind of stood out to me. And who did I miss? Clint Hurt. Jordan Davis was we saw Jordan Davis outside talking to him a little bit, and Clint, if you saw Clint Hurt, man, he's a big dude.
Yeah.
I
He
just
looks like a D lineman. That's why I like he's the coach.
well, he is a D line. He played D
Yeah,
line.
no, I know that. I'm saying though,
Yeah.
he really still looks the part, which is cool.
Yeah, man, he is. And Jordan called him wide as an insert name, F word. He is a big dude. And, maybe he's got some input on how to use Jordan Davis um, properly and as best as humanly possible as one of the better nose tackles in the NFL. So good to talk to those guys. 4 of the 5 were new, so it's the first time we talked to them. Stout, we've talked to obviously a bunch over the years. But yeah, really impressive. You can see the intelligence, you can see what they're going for. And particularly, the heavy tent was towards defense because they totally essentially remade the staff. And he had a history with Clint Hurt. He had a history with Christian Parker. He did not have a history with Bobby King, who the connection there is Nick Sirianni more than Big Fangio. So we'll see how Bobby King, and he might have the toughest job of all because he doesn't have the talent most of the other guys have.
Yeah, exactly. It seems to be a unison across the board for the coaching staff. Vic Fangio, Clint Hurt, and Jordan Davis. They all know that the number one thing for Jordan Davis is to be in shape. I know Clint Hurt said that yesterday. Vic Fangio pointed it out in his presser, and Jordan pointed it out in his presser. So seems to be that was my takeaway from the Clint Hurt on Jordan Davis topic.
Yeah, it's no secret they want him to play more. I always say,
but my point to that is talent is not the issue with Jordan Davis.
No.
He's a supremely talented player.
Conditioning, and it's the same way with Jalen Carter, to be honest. And they're both in shape. If you're talking about 300 plus pound guys, they've both always been in shape from a cosmetic standpoint. The issue with them is conditioning, and being able to play a heavy amount of snaps because they want them both on the field a lot. And look, that's part of the negative of being at Georgia because they can come at you in waves because they have so much talent. You can't do that in the NFL. If you're having big drop offs, you can't. You can talk. There's some teams with more depth. The Eagles have had tremendous depth up front for a number of years. There's more question marks this year, but even when they had the great depth, you still lose something. And that's why Fletcher Cox played so many snaps for so many years. The Eagles would constantly talk about, we got to start limiting the snaps of Fletcher Cox as he got a little bit older. They never could. They never did.
Yeah.
Because you're trying to win games and you want your best players on the field. So
Are we
that's sort of where
underrating the
they
loss
want.
of Fletcher Cox?
Yeah.
I just feel like it's not talked about more. I mean, I know he's obviously a Eagle Hall of Fame player, but
Yeah,
I just feel like
I don't
nobody's
know.
talking about it. To me, it seems like it's going to be a bigger deal. I know Fletcher wasn't playing his best ball at the end of the year. I think he was still playing great football, but a lot, something that he was the subject of some criticism the last couple of years. But I think it's going to be a big loss. I have high expectations for the young guys to step up into the role, but it is big shoes to fill.
Yeah, it is. I mean, everybody. I let's put it this way. I'm more confident in a weird way that Cam Jurgens, because just what I talked about. Is Cam Jurgens not going to be as good as Jason Kelsey? No, but I know he's going to be a pretty good center. And Stoutland sort of kind of validated my thoughts. I mean,
Yeah.
that's why he's here. That his traits, everything about the guy points to being a good center, a good NFL center. Doesn't mean great, doesn't mean Hall of Fame, but you're going to have above average play pretty consistently at the center position. I'm very confident in that. Um, Not as confident in that third um, defensive tackle spot, which in some ways can be a starter. Now, Milton Williams, I think, is a good player, but can he handle the level of snaps? We haven't seen it. And then you sort of drop off to Marlon Tuipulotu and Moro Ajomo. And if you want to throw PJ Mustapher in there, not as deep on paper as it has been in the past. When Fletcher was the starter and, all of a sudden, Milton Williams is a great backup player. But is he, is he going to be able to take that next step and handle the responsibilities that Fletcher Cox had?
Yeah, we'll see how it all plays out. John, what'd you make of Doug Nussmeier, the quarterback coach? He was one of the few offensive guys that spoke yesterday, but he did speak. Any takeaways from him?
Yeah, like I said, the most interesting part with Doug is talking about the integration, the meshing of the two offenses together, which I think has been an issue throughout the OTAs, and part of the reason the Eagles struggled offensively. They really are. Like, people talk about new schemes on defense. They talk about new schemes from Gannon to Desai, and now they're talking about a new scheme with Vic Fangio. They're not really new schemes, they're new people. They're playing the same defense, and there's a little bit of change from the perspective of, you know, John McMullen's different than Xander Kraus. So if you give us the same defense in the framework, it's still going to look different because we're different people. We might call something different in the moment. So from that standpoint, there's some difference, but it's basically the same scheme, the same philosophy, and it's not. They're changing offensively. Um, we'll see how much, and we'll see how much the old stuff is integrated. But it's been ugly early, and maybe that should have been expected. But I do think because of the expectations, people are like, "What's going on? What's going?" I mean, they don't look good offensively. Doesn't matter. It's June 4th. They're not playing on Sunday, so there's plenty of time to get things figured out. But um, it's been a struggle, and maybe more people should have expected that struggle at least early in the process.
Yeah, Doug also spoke about the clean operation, which you alluded to a little bit, but with the communication and everything, I guess that all ties into the meshing of the offenses, but he really seemed to put an emphasis on the communication between him, between Jalen Hurts, between Kellen Moore, um, between Jalen Hurts and his offense. So I thought that was pretty good too, because we've talked a lot about how Kellen Moore emphasized a clean operation on offense. So we got a little bit more insight into that from the quarterback coach, Doug Nussmeier.
Yeah, and you know, he's uh, had a lot of success with Dak Prescott and Justin Herbert, who are two talented quarterbacks. So, but a little bit different than Jalen Hurts. You know, Nick Sirianni's used the term unique when it comes to Jalen Hurts, and you know, you got to figure out how to best take advantage of those unique traits, and that's still a work in progress, I think, at this point.
Yeah, so we will see how it all shakes out with them. But I thought pretty good stuff, honestly, from the assistant coaches yesterday. John, what's your schedule today? What time are you heading down there? I know the Birds aren't practicing until after 1 o'clock, I believe.
Yeah, 1:30. Nick Sirianni's going to talk before practice, so about 12. It's supposed to be 12:25, but knowing Nick, it'll be 12:30, 12:35. And then some assorted players. So guys are going to talk before practice, more of a regular season vibe. That's what they do in the regular season for mini camp. Then they practice at 1:30, which will be open to reporters Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, the first mandatory mini camp. And I should mention Christian Parker did, you know, talk about James Bradbury like you should expect to see him today. So that's going to be interesting as well.
Yeah, he was open about that. A lot of communication with James Bradbury. Seemed to be talking a lot. So I don't know. I think it's interesting. I mean, what's coming out of the organization is different than what the expectation is, even though everything that they've done, not the words, the actions would point to James Bradbury being gone. We'll see how it all plays out. John, before we get to a break, we'll have Jeff Kerr coming up. Max Sharping, the guard, gets signed for some depth heading into minicamp, heading into late June here in minicamp. What do you make of the Max Sharping signing? Just a depth piece there for the Eagles?
Yeah, 33 starts, mainly with Houston. The past couple of years, he's been with Cincinnati, and he was a backup there. He did start in the playoffs a couple of years ago. Played all 3 games when Alex Kappa got hurt. So a lot of starting experience. I don't think it's necessarily about Tyler Steen. I know people go there. To me, it's probably more about maybe Matt Hennessy is not projecting as much as they would have hoped. You know, he hasn't played essentially. He has, you know, basically 2 years. He had back-to-back knee injuries, played a little bit, but not much. So clearly they want to maybe have something else with that interior, and also the younger guys. You know, people had Trevor Keegan in the starting lineup. You know that, Sander. That's probably an indication that ain't happening. Well, again, you get young players quickly, and you see, well, they're not ready, and you know, Darian Kennard and people like this who don't have any experience. Clearly, you probably don't want to go with a young player at right guard with 1 career start and then, oh, by the way, have a backup with even less experience. That's probably not a good way to go. So um, you get a guy in here with 33 career starts, as I said, and at least you know you could probably have some kind of competency at the position if the worst if worst comes to worst.
Yeah, I always think it's interesting the signings they make, like at this time of the year after they have a couple practices, because I think the team starts to see once they're on the field, okay, we need some depth here. Okay, that guy's not going to pan out how we thought he was going to pan out, at least not right now.
Well, at least early, yeah. I mean,
yeah,
those 5th round picks, we talked about it a lot. I mean,
yeah, there's a little bit too much expectation on them.
yeah, way too much expectation.
Well, I
So,
guess that comes right after the draft, and then everybody realizes a couple months later that that's not how it's going to shake out. And Eagles sign a guard and push him down the depth chart, and he's history till next year. And we'll talk about him on June 4th of
which is fine, by the way. There's
yeah.
nothing wrong with it, and Trevor's going to be here, but you know, And every once in a while, people bring up certain guys at certain positions. Puka Nacua last year. Yeah,
Yeah.
every once in a while. But the odds are not in your favor when you
Yeah,
start
those
talking
are
about
the
that.
exceptions.
Yeah.
I think the biggest hurdle for Trevor Keegan's actually going from left to right. I mean, he's
Yeah,
played
and
left.
they've started him at left guard.
Yeah.
And, and they'll probably expand it as you get to the summer and try to see how he handles it. But they want to get him comfortable at the home position, as Christian Parker called it, for the defensive backs. You want guys to have a home, and then you build out from there.
Yeah, so we'll see how that all plays out. Feels appropriate to mention the passing of Larry Allen as we talk about the guard position. One of the greatest guards in NFL history. A little bit before my time.
What a dominant player!
Yeah,
Oh,
I watched the one video of him yesterday where I forget who it was. They turned the ball over and he's chasing a guy upfield. I'm like, a guy that big, that fast. I mean, it's truly remarkable. But John, any words for Larry Allen? Any quick stories or anything you have to offer on Larry Allen?
Yeah, I mean, 7-time All-Pro. He's one of the greatest offensive linemen of all time. 2 All-Decades team. He was so strong. There was a video out there of him doing 40-something reps at 225. I mean, he just pushed people around. And I talk about, Eric Williams was a big time offensive lineman for the Cowboys as well. One of the few people that could handle Reggie White. Then he had a little bit of he had a car accident, I believe, and it hurt him a little bit physically and started the descent. But Larry Allen was just, again, people talk about John Hanna at guard, Randall McDaniel, Larry Allen. Those are the 3 best guards. And I'm not going back to the 40s and 50s, but he was dominant. And I talk about those Cowboys teams all the time. They had 3 running plays, and that's confirmed from Jimmy Johnson. Everybody knew what was coming, and they couldn't stop it. And the reason they couldn't stop it, and Emmitt Smith was great. I'm not trying to downplay his greatness, but they couldn't deal with the offensive line. That group as a whole was one of the 2 or 3 best offensive lines of all time. And Larry Allen was the best player on certainly the best offensive line of his generation. And to be the best player on the best offensive line, that's pretty stinking good.
Yeah, so rest in peace to Larry Allen. Tough news yesterday that came down in the NFL world. It's a computer problem type of morning. I think Jeff Kerr had a little bit of technical difficulties, but he's back with us waiting in the green room. We're going to take our first commercial break. We'll be back with Jeff Kerr on this mini camp Tuesday. Eagles will officially be out there for mandatory mini camp today, so a lot to talk about on Birds 365. Stay tuned. Jeff Kerr is next.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.